Alright, welcome to Com 215. We are from the New Zealand group, and today we have with us here a very special guest. Here is Mr. Martin Tomlinson. Mr. Martin, welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, could you tell us more a bit about yourself, what you do, and where you come from?
I'm from a market research company called Research Now. We're a global leader in market research, online field work, particularly working with social media sample. We provide social media sample access to different countries around the world for use for people to do market research with. Myself, I'm from New Zealand. I'm the former New Zealand manager of the business. I live in Singapore now, and I look after the Southeast Asian and the growth of Southeast Asia for our business. So based here in Singapore, looking after everywhere between China and Southeast Asia. I've been working in the market research industry for 10 years and actively with market research society in Singapore and New Zealand.
Right, Mr. Martin, we are very keen to know how are the behaviors of New Zealand users like pertaining to the usage of social media. So could you tell us more about are there any distinct user characteristics of digital media users in New Zealand?
Well, in New Zealand, internet penetration is relatively high, and it has been for some time. I wouldn't say there's any distinct, from my experience, a very distinct area of people who use it more than others. Perhaps maybe women slightly more, and people of white collar slightly more, obviously because they have more access. In saying that, phones in third generation, and GPRS phones and 3.5G and 4G coming up makes internet far more accessible, and having applications like Facebook, Twitter, etc., all able to be used on your cell phone means that the availability is out there as well. So in a country like New Zealand, which has been online for quite some time, and has a very developed marketplace, the larger population of people are on social media. For instance, Bebo, which was prior to Facebook, was actually predominantly New Zealanders. New Zealanders really were the largest group of social media respondents on Bebo at the time before it moved to Facebook, or Facebook became more popular. And now I think 1 out of every 2 New Zealanders are on Facebook. So the penetration is very, very high.
So how do you think this social media has impacted consumers' attitudes and behaviors pertaining to the way that they receive information?
People look to Facebook, I suppose, faster than they look to their news source. News actually looks to Facebook to find the news a lot of the time. Things like disasters. I mean, living here in Singapore, I found out the Christchurch earthquake before it was reported because I was on Facebook. I get a Facebook update. I'm seeing my friends talking about the earthquake. I'm seeing things that are happening before it's even been released in the media. And again, news sources are starting to cite Facebook or Twitter or social media applications as being where the news is coming from now. So instead of a journalist literally going out and finding the news, they're sitting there on Facebook looking for news on Facebook. But it's a great way of tapping into people in real time of what's happening. The phones that we have in our pockets can easily turn into a recording device, whether it be a movie that could be shot of something happening at the time, car accident, some strange lights in the sky, who knows what it could be, but it can be done like that. Pictures can be taken of current events, and they can be uploaded very quickly into mainstream media.
I see. So can one safely say that the usage of social media and Twitter in the event of an earthquake, would you say that it saved lives?
I wouldn't go so far as saying it saves lives, but it would definitely create awareness very quickly. And the other thing with creating the awareness is it creates, especially when people know people who are affected, it starts creating it starts creating a sense of understanding, empathy, a much larger sense of empathy than traditional media could otherwise do. If you've got friends involved in Christchurch, or with the earthquake, or in Auckland with the tornado recently, and you're finding out about it from them and through their friends and family, your social media network is also in the same boat, where we're all feeling very empathetic for the people in that situation. Therefore, donations would be increased, in my opinion. I don't know that for a fact, but I would say that people are more likely to give generously in a situation when they know people. And rather than just seeing it on the news, where they're very stand back. Sure, I remember one person I know who lives down in Christchurch. Well, this way, you know people who live in Christchurch who are directly affected by it, and you can see what they're saying. You've got a personal connection to that, and I think with social media, it involves you a lot more in what's happening.
Great. Well, I think we'll find out a lot more about how social media and what happened in the disaster in New Zealand from you. We'd like to have your opinion about preview-based digital channels provided by the television from New Zealand. Could you give us about your opinion on free-based digital channels?
My opinion is that it really hasn't been taken up as much as it possibly could have been, and a lot of to do with that has been television reception in New Zealand has long been a problem because it's a very sparsely populated country. The analogue receivers and transceivers were not doing a particularly great job. I think penetration was around 60% on analogue. So to counter that, when Sky TV released in New Zealand about 10, 15 years ago, they had a satellite system. So most rural houses were on satellite. Pay TV was introduced quite at an early stage, and pay TV penetration is very high, which is all digital channels. It's based on the British version. I think there's around 60 or 70 different channels that people can access. So when Freeview came in only the last 3 or 4 years ago, it was really introduced as a future-proof. The way that I see it was introduced as a future-proof, as they're going to be wiping out the analogue signal in the next 2 years, I think. So it was ensuring that people were going to update their screens, were going to update with a Freeview box or update with a new TV. So when the analogue signal turns off, they can move directly to digital. Digital has the benefit of being able to reach more of a population. But in saying that, Freeview, the channels themselves have only had filler TV on them. There hasn't been anything particularly interesting or exciting that the population would get involved with. Pay TV is very prominent in New Zealand. I think 60% of households will have Sky television. And then there will be a percentage with cable, from Telstra's cable. There'll also be, so I'd say pay television is relatively very high in New Zealand in comparison to a Freeview take-up.
What do you feel is the future for interactive channels in New Zealand? Do you think that consumers will gravitate towards one direction?
Interactive TV will work and does work. Freeview is not the right approach through it right now, I would say, just because the ratings of Freeview channels are very low. If the content was better, and the ratings were higher, it would work quite well.
So content is key.
Content is always key, that's right. I mean, the HD units that they have and the Sky units that they have in New Zealand are very, very good, and they're very interactive. They're able to, you can play games through them already, you can do a lot of different interactions through the units. Even coming to Singapore, the startup systems that we have in here are probably more dated than what you'd find in New Zealand. So the ability is there, the technology is there, it's just whether or not the digital media is going to make it work or not.
Great. So we'd like to have a more, we would like to get your perspective on how a company should go about doing business in New Zealand and how they can leverage on social media to do business in New Zealand. Do you have any suggestions for people who are keen to expand their business?
Well, social media it's a great way of reaching a great amount of people very quickly, but it can also go very wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
Be responsive. If you're going to be involved in the online sphere, be responsive as possible. Provide a channel of feedback, but maybe don't make it so publicised. Having Facebook pages and like pages and etc. are a great way of being able to engage with new people, finding a group of people who really love your brand, if you're an existing brand. It's also a great conduit to providing free samples, things like that. People who like your page, doing some market research, can be done online very easily through Facebook, through YouTube, through Skype, for instance. But it's also can swing the other way very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So making sure you have an experienced and a dedicated online manager, someone who's responsive to queries, someone who's responsive to making sure, seeing the shifts and changes that go online, particularly with social media, is something I think is very, very important for businesses. If you're going to go online, you need to be very prepared with someone who's a PR focus to make sure that the swings are not going to affect your business. And it is a very fickle area. People can like you and they can hate you by the next day very, very quickly. And there's plenty of viral examples where things have gone wrong. But you go right, it goes very right.
All right, Martin, thank you for spending this precious 10 minutes with us, and we really enjoyed ourselves. We hope you enjoyed yourself too. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene.